Hello learners, welcome to today's discussion. Today we are going to look at a question on probability that was done in the year 1990, paper 1, question number 10. And the question we have reads, at a factory 120 candidates have to be interviewed, 48 for carpentry, 32 for masonry and 40 for plumbing. Past experience indicates that 80% would pass carpentry, 45% would pass masonry, and 60% would pass plumbing. Part A, a candidate is picked at random. Find the probability that Roman 1, he is to be interviewed for carpentry. Roman 2, he is to be interviewed for masonry and would pass. Roman 3, he would pass the interview. And B, how many candidates are expected to pass their interviews. Before we answer the question, let us try to summarize the question in a few steps. And we are told that 120 candidates were interviewed. Out of 120, we are told 48 interviewed for carpentry. We are told that 32 interviewed for masonry and 40 interviewed for plumbing. We are further told that 80% would pass carpentry. That means those who are going to fail will be 20%. We are told further that 45% will pass masonry, meaning 55% will fail, and lastly 60% will pass plumbing, meaning 40% will fail. Part A of the question, a candidate is picked at random. Find the probability that he is to be interviewed for carpentry. Very easy. You come and say probability that the candidate is interviewed for carpentry. You take the number of candidates who were interviewed for carpentry, which are 48, over the total number of candidates to be interviewed, which are 120. And if you simplify 48 divided by 120, you'll get 2 out of 5. We move down. This is Roman 1 of part A. Then Roman 2, he is to be interviewed for masonry and would pass. Simply come and say probability of being interviewed for masonry. And will pass. To get the probability that the student is going to be interviewed for masonry, you take the number of the students which have been interviewed for masonry, which are 32, out of the total 120. You multiply by the probability of passing masonry, which is 45 out of 100. If you multiply the numerators, you are going to get 1440 out of 12,000. And if you simplify 1440 out of 12,000, you will get 3 out of 25. We move down to Roman 3. And Roman 3 says, find the probability that he would pass the interview. So what it means is that whether it is carpentry, masonry, or plumbing, so we come and say probability of passing the interview. This is going to be equal to the probability of the student being interviewed for carpentry and passing that carpentry, we add the probability of the student being interviewed for masonry and passing that masonry interview. We add the probability of the student being interviewed for plumbing. We multiply by the probability of passing the plumbing interview. So we are going to take the probability of, being interviewed for carpentry, which is 48 out of 120. We multiply by the probability of passing, which is 80%, meaning 80 over 100. We add the probability of being interviewed for masonry, which is 32 out of the total 120. We multiply by passing masonry, which is 45%. We add the probability of being interviewed for plumbing, which is 40 out of 120. We multiply by the probability of passing, which is 60 out of 100. If we move down, we are going to have 48 times 80, which is 3840, divided by 12,000. We add 32 times 45, you get 1,440, divided by 12,000. We add 40 times 60, which is 2,400. We divide by 12,000. And if you add all the numerators, you'll get 7680 out of 12,000. And if you simplify 7680 over 12,000, you'll get 16 out of 25 as the final answer. We move to part B. Part B, how many candidates are expected to pass their interviews? So part B, you come and say probability of the number of candidates passing the interview. And for us to get the answer to this, the number of candidates who are going to pass carpentry will be 80% of 48. We add the number of candidates who are going to pass masonry, which is 45% out of 32. We add the number that is going to pass plumbing, which is 60% of 40. So 80% of 48 will be 38.4. We add 45% of 32, which is 14.4. Then 60% of 40 will give us 24. And the total here is going to give us 76.8, which is going to be approximately 76 students, since we cannot have students as points. Thank you for watching and welcome to the channel. And in case you have questions regarding this particular question, kindly interact with us in the comment section and we shall be glad to address your concerns accordingly.